Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining me this evening. My name's Charlotte Hunter, and I'm a nutritionist, and I specialise in menopause. I've worked in this area, or actually I've worked as a nutritionist probably for about 14 years now, and it's really been in the last 4 years that I've become particularly interested in menopause nutrition. Mainly through my own experience. I had a surgical menopause after a hysterectomy in 2019, so I was in my mid-40s. So it was quite a change for me. There wasn't any run up to it. It was very much menopause, literally overnight. And it was around that time I started to notice that many of the clients were also in that age group or found themselves in that perimenopause period and beyond. So I'm going to talk this evening. I say menopause nutrition. I mean, this is a massive subject, and I can't possibly do it justice in the time we've got this evening. So I've decided to focus on the stuff that you can actually put into place tomorrow or this evening. You know, the very simple steps that really matter. We could look at bone health, we could look at cholesterol, we could look at cardiovascular health. There's a great long list of amazing topics we could explore. But I've decided to keep it quite focused this evening, just to really cover the groundwork. I don't have all the answers. When it comes to menopause, a lot of the research is a bit sketchy, a bit non-existent in some cases. But I'll do my best just to bring out the main points for you. Please feel free to pop questions in the chat. I'll try and keep an eye on those. But if we've got any other questions, we can always do that at the end as well. But please feel free just to pop those in anyway. And like I said, I'll do my best. Right. So I always like to start my talks with a quote. And I thought this was a brilliant one from Zoe Ball. "I'm hot and hairy. It's like my last hurrah. Is it going to get better? Do I do HRT, or do I have the funny tea supplement?" And this is quite representative of a lot of the clients that I see. They come to me, they're not sure whether they want to do HRT or not. Their friends on it, they're not sure they want to do it. They think they might want to lose weight. And they just have a lot of questions. But I think sometimes there's this very polarized view that you either have to be all in with your nutrition and lifestyle or all in with HRT, when in reality you can do either or, you can do both. But really it's about exploring and experiencing your menopause in the way that you want to. And there's a lot of noise at the moment, isn't there, from celebrities saying what we should and shouldn't do. And while I question some of it, I think generally the sentiment is along the right track. It's about making menopause more mainstream, get us talking about it, and just increase the awareness. Because, let's face it, it's something that all women will go through in some form at some time. So what I'll do today is talk about menopause itself, how I work, how it affects us, some tips around blood sugar balance, cortisol, snacking in particular, some top tips, and then hopefully we'll have loads of time for questions. So this is really a representation of our whole hormone journey, I guess, or whole hormone experience. And we start at puberty, we end at postmenopause, but we've got this crazy old road in between. And menopause and hormone problems don't just happen. There's no such thing as a hormone manual. We're all different, and we're all going to have a very, very different experience. And what's happening with your menopause is very much affected by what's happened throughout your life. So what happened at puberty? What's your hormone story been? When I think about mine, it was more hormone nightmare rather than fairy story, I think. But think about all the things that you've experienced along that road to menopause, because that's going to feed into that experience. What was your health and lifestyle like? How are you turning up or showing up to menopause? How is your health, your body, physically and mentally? And the way that I work is to really look at the bigger picture. And I use this diagram with my clients, with the practitioners that I work with. I do a lot of practitioner training. And it all starts from the center here. What's your stress? How are your blood sugar levels? What is your insulin doing? And that's the hormone that helps us to use carbohydrates for energy or storage. Is there any inflammation? What's your genetic picture? And then beyond that, thinking about, what we're eating, but how our body processes it. So thinking about how you break it down in your stomach, how you absorb it in your small intestines, and how you finally get rid of it out the other end. And then also sleep, movement, and your spiritual and emotional health and factors. So menopause is it's a whole system or whole body event. And we can't just think about it in terms of symptoms. It's much, much more than just symptoms. So I thought we'd cover some hormone basics. And I don't know about you, and it's quite difficult to gauge how to pitch this, because we've got such probably a wide audience of different ages, different experiences, and all sorts. But I think the one thing that I find with a lot of my clients is that we sort of just gloss over our menstrual cycles. And I think it's really important just to understand the basics of what's happening. So we've all looked at this at school, college, if you've done science university degrees in biology, you might know a bit more. But, we just have our periods and we don't really necessarily think about what's really going on. But our hormones are constantly changing throughout our monthly cycle. And remember, we're quite primitive beings and our physiology hasn't changed that much over the years. So the prime goal of our sex hormones is to prepare for reproduction. It's all about producing, offspring, in quite a simple way. But during our cycles, which are generally 28 days for the lucky ones, but it can vary. Some women might have 35 days plus, others might have 26 days, or perhaps even less. So it's about working out what's normal for you, and if it's regularly that normal. But generally what happens is our estrogen gradually increases in the first part of the cycle. It builds up to ovulation in response to FSH, which is this hormone here. We ovulate, and then our progesterone kicks off, and then the hormones gradually decline to the end of the cycle. So around ovulation, we have a ruptured follicle, and that's the egg that's released. And obviously in pregnancy, it's fertilized. If it's not, then we have our period, and then the whole cycle starts again. I mean, I'm not going to go into any detail of this, but it's just to give you, I suppose, an overview of, what we need to know about our periods. We should be aware of these changes, because this is what changes massively in menopause. And as we go through perimenopause, which you'll see in this next diagram, oops, not that diagram, where's it gone? That in perimenopause, things start changing quite dramatically. So in summary, the menstrual cycle occurs in the 3 phases. So follicular, which is the first part where you've got that egg developing and the estrogen rising. Ovulatory, when the egg's released. And the luteal, which is when the progesterone increases. And then at the end, everything drops right down and the cycle starts again. And these hormone patterns are going to change and vary from woman to woman. There's no blueprint. Hormonal shifts can be gradual, they can be fast and furious, but it's the hormone shifts that can affect factors such as stress, eating patterns, and sleep. So if you imagine those lovely, nice rhythmic cycles that you have during your reproductive years, as you approach, which I suppose represented here by these blue lines, as you approach perimenopause, things just start changing. Can you see? You sort of get these spikes, dips. Your estrogen in particular is all over the place. And then gradually in menopause and beyond, it sort of tails off again. So it's quite a dramatic phase in perimenopause, which is here. So the estrogen is, peaks and troughs before finally falling. And if we think about hormones, well, they're chemical messengers. They're produced by special glands around our body. There's approximately 150 chemicals, which are known as hormones. and they're racing through our bodies daily. And these chemical messages tell the brain and other organs what to do. The hormones are controlled by feedback systems, so it's a bit like the thermostat in your home. If something's too high or too low, the body's going to respond accordingly. And many things are going to upset this delicate balance. So it could be aging, nutritional deficiencies, emotional, physical factors, diseases, alcohol, bad diet, lack of sleep, especially. And as we saw in the previous diagram or previous diagrams, our main hormones are estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And their focus tends to be around reproductive health, but they have got lots of other benefits in the body. And if you just look around here, you know, we have estrogen receptors all over our body, and therefore the effects of estrogen are far-reaching beyond just reproductive function. So, you know, we've got musculoskeletal system, urogenital system, sexual function, which we've talked about, weight, metabolic changes, skin, hair, nervous system. So it's literally head to toe, isn't it? And this is why the symptoms of menopause can be so diverse and complex. We may see changes to metabolism, blood pressure, reproductive changes, blood sugar changes, kidney and liver, sleep disruption, aging of our skin, changes to appetite, sex drive, you know, things like thrush, UTIs. You know, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But you know, in theory, it could infect you anywhere in your body because we have these estrogen receptors everywhere. So if you think back to that diagram that I just showed you here, so when this estrogen's going haywire, guess what's happening to the receptors? I mean, you know, they're literally having a party, and then they're crashing, and then they're having a party, then they're crashing. So that's where the symptoms are coming from. But technically speaking, I've got this quote here from the World Health Organization, natural menopause is deemed to have occurred after 12 months, consecutive months, without menstruation, for which there is no other obvious physiological or pathological cause, and in the absence of clinical intervention. So basically, if you haven't had a period for 12 months, there's nothing else going on that might have caused that. That's your, you know, I suppose your official diagnosis of menopause. And although menopause is getting a lot of press at the moment, I still think there are some big gaps in our understanding, or some of the things that we're talking about. Firstly, menopause is natural, and you know, it goes without saying that women shouldn't feel ashamed or embarrassed about going through it. Some will talk about it more than others, but it's generally going to happen between the ages of 45 to 55. And the ovaries get smaller, they stop producing as much estrogen. And this also has a knock-on effect on progesterone and testosterone levels, as well as other hormones around the body, because all of the hormones are talking to each other the whole time. And production of those hormones occur in your brain. So it's in the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. And menopause essentially signals the end of a woman's childbearing years. So the fertility drops. Certain surgeries, medical treatments can induce menopause. For example, getting a hysterectomy, cancer treatments such as chemotherapy, pelvic radiation therapy. You know, lots of the reasons. Certain medications, certain eating disorders can trigger menopause as well. But really, if we think about it objectively, the leading cause of menopause is actually age. No one talks about menopause as being, you know, part of the natural aging process. A woman's born with a finite number of eggs, which are stored in the ovaries, and eventually the body is just going to run out of those eggs, and that's going to alter the natural cyclical nature of a woman's reproductive function. So it's very difficult to predict. You can't really diagnose menopause or perimenopause. There isn't, you know, one single blood test that will identify it. It's very much about symptoms, and that's something that you can discuss with your GP or doctor. So I don't know who's in the audience this evening. There are different stages to menopause. And as I said, there's no diagnostic test. So it's sometimes hard to know exactly, where you are and look, and thinking about those different phases. Perimenopause is considered the months or years which precede a woman's last period. So that can be anything from 3 months to 10 years, believe it or not. During this time, estrogen and progesterone are in flux. So estrogen's fluctuating widely, as we saw in that diagram, where there's a noticeable decline in progesterone. It's very much a roller coaster effect. And due to those receptors all around the body that take the messages from the estrogen, symptoms can be, anything, hot flushes, headaches, migraines, sleep problems, fatigue, night sweats, racing heart, loss of libido, heavy periods, irregular periods. It's a really great long list. At one point, there was 30-something known symptoms, but I think every time I look at the list of official symptoms, it seems a lot higher. And I think during perimenopause, you can support some of those symptoms and almost use it as an opportunity to make some dietary and lifestyle changes. That may be with or without HRT. It's always good to have a chat. Menopause itself, as I've said, it's 12 months since your last menstrual period. Women can have their follicle stimulating hormone tested, but it isn't always a good representation because it can also fluctuate like estrogen. And the safest and probably the best marker of menopause is the loss of ovarian function, so i.e. the loss of periods. And then postmenopausally, that's any time after the menopause. So really, menopause isn't really a thing, is it? It's just 12 months, that's the menopause, and then you're straight into postmenopause. And during that time, the estrogen can continue to drop. And although many of the symptoms do seem to settle, sometimes women can find particular symptoms will get worse. So that could be urinary problems, vaginal problems, but also being postmenopausal does put us at a higher risk of heart disease and osteoporosis. Sounds all fun and games, isn't it? But, I suppose I'm sounding a bit doom and gloom about this. Absolutely not my intention. It's just to really map out those 3 main stages that we talk about, because we talk about menopause, but we lump it all together, don't we? I think we don't always differentiate what we're talking about. So let's just give you some background, really. So I've already mentioned that our reproductive hormones are very closely connected. And there are other hormones that talk to our reproductive hormones, one of them being cortisol. So it's got quite a close relationship to what's happening with us in terms of our reproductive hormones. Cortisol, hopefully you've heard of, it's our stress hormone, and it's produced partly by the adrenal glands, which are 2 triangular-shaped, walnut-sized glands that sit on top of your kidneys, and they're activated when the body is under pressure. It has a variety of roles, so it helps the body prepare for fight or flight. It increases heart rate, blood pressure, blood glucose, respiration, muscle health. It's got a great long list of things that it does. So you need it. It's a positive thing. But in excess, and if we're constantly stressed and constantly, things pushing our buttons, it can, turn off symptoms that it doesn't think are quite as important. So, it can affect your digestion. It can affect your hormones. It can, cause you to store more energy. There's a great long list of things that we don't want to happen as a result of too much cortisol. And if we think about our measurements of cortisol, they can go a bit haywire during perimenopause and menopause, mainly due to the adrenal glands taking over estrogen production. And in addition to this, a perimenopausal woman's body is under constant stress due to those fluctuating hormones and the levels of estrogen, the decline in progesterone. And this cortisol dominance can also create a situation of alternating high blood sugar and high insulin, which we'll talk about in a moment. But cortisol is not our friend. So, we obviously we need it for our body to function properly. But when we're under stress, we don't want it running out of control. And it's like thinking about our bodies in quite a, I suppose, quite a simple way. Thinking about our intended physiological functions, that we've got these checks and balances in our body, because if we're being chased by a great big bear, we need that cortisol to get our muscles going and to give us a boost of energy, to increase our blood sugar and give us the energy to either run away from the bear or turn around and fight the bear. But in real life, when you're sitting at your computer and you've got deadlines and you need to be somewhere, you've got the kids screaming, the dog barking, you're trying to work from home, your cortisol's just firing away. So potentially increasing your blood sugar and potentially increasing weight gain, especially around your tummy, because that's where it likes to send it. So this sort of leads me on to sugar. I've sort of gone off on a bit of a tangent there, but it sort of leads me to sugar. And hopefully this will kind of link together. So what happens when you eat sugar? Well, when you eat something sweet or very carbohydrate rich, your body converts them into glucose. And if large amounts are consumed, the body increases the blood glucose levels and the body has to respond. And that response is in the form of insulin, which is released from the pancreas into the bloodstream, which helps the cells take on the glucose as fuel. When it's got enough fuel, any excess glucose is stored in the muscles and the liver. And when those stores are full, the remaining glucose is then converted to body fat. It's not what we want. So if you think about that's what happens when we eat sugar, think about adding stress onto that as well, where your body's automatically and almost artificially increasing blood sugar levels, but you're not burning any of that off. You're potentially just going about your normal life, but in a state of stress. I'm not saying everyone's stressed, but menopause can be a really stressy time. Many of us find ourselves in what we call the sandwich generation, where we've got, perhaps elderly, unwell, demanding, got to be careful what I say, parents, and then we're dealing with young children as well. And we're kind of right in the middle of that, being caregivers to both sides. And this is really what's happening. It's a bit like a roller coaster, isn't it? And the key to a healthier menopause is blood sugar balance. So we can avoid the highs and lows of glucose and insulin imbalances, which upset all of the hormones we've mentioned so far. And as I said, try and think of all of your hormones as being connected. Even things like the thyroid, your blood sugar, your insulin, and as well as the sex hormones. And the menopause really does affect your blood sugar levels. Estrogen impacts the hormone insulin, which is responsible for taking sugar from the blood. And as I said, enabling cells to utilize the sugar as energy or storing it. Estrogen also helps keep the body insulin sensitive, so that we can hear the signals from the insulin. And what happens is when we go through menopause, many women naturally become insulin resistant, where we don't hear the signals as clearly from the insulin to be able to get that sugar out of our system, either into the cells, into storage, whether that's liver muscles or as excess fat. And during menopause also, our nervous system is put in a huge amount of pressure. Remember I said about those receptors in your nervous system and the effect of stress. So it's putting our body under huge amounts of pressure. So that, alongside blood sugar problems, alongside the cortisol, we've got adrenaline here, which is another adrenal hormone. All of this can make menopause symptoms worse. It can make hot flushes worse. So what can we do? Well, this is just another slide to illustrate this concept of the blood sugar roller coaster. Okay, and what can happen? And when we have those highs and lows, you know, how does it make us feel? Well, after you have a big sugar hit, you know, you scoff a great big donut, your body's going to pump out way more insulin than it needs, especially if it's doing it over and over again. So initially, you're going to have that sugar high and be full of energy. You're going to be bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. But this explosion of insulin causes too much glucose to be taken out of the bloodstream. And then that can result in you feeling as though you have low blood sugar levels, and then you have that massive energy crash. And the worst part of all of this is you get into a vicious cycle. You know, you have more sugar, you crave more sugar, you crash, you have more sugar, you crash. And that's this concept of blood sugar roller coaster. And I wanted to talk about this really in relation to how we eat around menopause. And really, you know, as you're listening, I hope you realize that this doesn't just apply to menopause. You know, this applies to all of us, you know, whether it's husbands, wives, partners, children, teenagers, you know, all of this is relevant, you know, about eating well to sustain healthy energy levels. And for years, we've been told to graze or eat like birds. And I think snacking has become embedded in our lives, from, you know, that sociable morning coffee break to the all too familiar afternoon pick-me-up, or if you go fridge raiding or you work in an office and it's somebody's birthday, there's always cake lurking around. And we love snacking. I think we're programmed to snack, but we don't need it. Because when you eat, your body releases insulin, as I've said, and your digestion has a mega workout. And if you're doing this several times a day, it's putting all of those processes under enormous stress. I suppose you can compare it to a theatre performance. You know, so everything is finely tuned, everything's choreographed, but performances need preparation, precision, and recovery, just like your body. You know, they can't do back-to-back shows. There's got to be that rest. And leaving space between your meals can help with that. And we'll come on to that in a moment. So the problem with snacking is that you're always eating. So you're more likely to put on weight, partly through excess calorie consumption, but also because of this blood sugar roller coaster. You lose track of when you're hungry and when you're full because you don't hear or feel the signals. You know, I think if you space your meals out, you start to recognize what real hunger is, with that grumbling in your tummy. That's those hormones being released that tell you to eat. And then you can hear the signals from the hormones that are telling you to stop as well. And those two hormones are called leptin and ghrelin, if anyone wants to geek out on those. High insulin levels may lead to conditions such as abdominal weight gain, insulin resistance, which I mentioned, which we naturally become insulin resistant as we move through menopause. You may start to experience bloating, intolerances, digestive problems, you know, if you're constantly snacking. And the other thing, and this is something I don't think we talk about enough, if you're constantly snacking, even if it's healthy stuff, if it's smoothies or fruit or dried dates and nuts, you're still eating and you're constantly exposing your teeth to sugars, you know, healthy or otherwise, which is going to encourage decay. So there's so many reasons why we just shouldn't be snacking. And I'm really, really passionate about this because I think ditching snacking is the biggest change you can make to your diet for your health and well-being. When you're exercising, obviously you've got to factor that in, but for most of the time, you know, doing an average day, you know, we don't need all the snacks unless, of course, you know, you're doing some serious exercise. So I've got a list of tips here. So the first thing to really think about is just crowding out the bad stuff. If you eat more healthy stuff, there's less room for bad stuff. I mean, that's fairly simple, isn't it, really? Eat protein at every meal and every snack. If you look at some of the various government guidelines on how to build meals, and if I look at the NHS guidelines, what they'll say is, build your meal around your portion of carbohydrates, then choose the protein, then the fat, then the vegetables. But actually, I think we should be doing it the other way. Think about your protein first. So is it going to be chicken-based, fish, tofu, beans, lentils? What's your starting point? And then build your food around that. So have your vegetables, some fat. And a really good way to think about it is, a palm-sized portion of protein, 2 handfuls of veg. Your fat, it's about the size of your thumb, depending on how big your thumbs are. So it's maybe about a tablespoon. And then think about your carbs as the side dish. So just a couple of spoons, just to make up your plate. But I think sometimes we eat too many of those starchy carbs, especially in menopause. So I think fibre and veggies, I said 2 big handfuls per meal. Work on your sleep. And sleep is one of the main symptoms of menopause. Lack of sleep, either not being able to get to sleep, or waking in the night, or not waking up refreshed. So think about your routines. What do you do in the evening to help you wind down? Avoid sugary drinks and juices. Fruit juices. I'm not demonizing them. Every now and again is fine. As part of a meal, fine. But just be aware that they're liquid sugar, essentially. If you have I think it was Tim Spector in the news said he'd rather people drank Coke than orange. I wouldn't quite go that far. I think I'd still rather people had a glass of orange juice than a can of Coke. It's different types of sugar, but juices still have a lot of fruit sugar in there. And it's fast releasing sugars as well. So if you are going to drink a juice, have it with your food. Don't have it on its own. Move. Well, I don't need to mention that one. I think we can move on. Planning. Plan your food, plan your meals. And I think the big thing is just don't sweat the small stuff. If you're going to have a bar of chocolate, that's fine. Just don't do it every day. As I said, their party food is for parties. I'm not saying that we all have to be perfect. I'm not perfect. I don't intend to ever be perfect. So, you can have those things in your diet, but just, crowd out most of it with the healthy stuff. And some of the dietary triggers we need to think about, especially when we look at menopause symptoms like hot flushes, stress, anxiety, insomnia, for example. And, these are just some examples, but, what are your triggers? What are your symptoms? It can help to keep a diet and lifestyle diary, because when you can identify the problems, you can do something about them. All of these things are known to potentially drive hot flushes, for example. So alcohol is the big one. Cigarettes or vaping, caffeine, and some spices, some chilies in particular, can sometimes increase those flushes. One of the big questions I'm asked is, well, what's the best menopause diet? And there isn't really one perfect diet for anyone who's going through menopause. And it really is down to what's going on for you, your activity levels, where you are in menopause, your stress levels, where you are now, where you're wanting to get to. There's so many different reasons. It's very difficult to have a particular menopause diet. And I got this slide, so I quite like this diagram. Because it just shows you roughly, what you should be having over a day. I mean, I wouldn't say you need to have that in your plate, every single meal. But this is really what we're looking at over a day. And it's quite similar to what I said, always focus your meal around your protein, your vegetables, and your grains, fruits on the side, and then you've got your oils as well. So this is in the slide, so you'll have a copy of this. But if you want to get the actual PDF, you can go to this website, which is the BANT website, which is the British Association for Nutrition and Lifestyle Medicine. They've got some quite good consumer graphics and information. But I'll perhaps pop a spare copy in that can be shared with you as well. But really, a menopause protocol doesn't exist, and I'm sure you've seen loads of books being advertised on various menopause diets and plans. But overall, in terms of the research, the most beneficial outcomes for menopause is actually the Mediterranean diet. And it just wins hands down for pretty much everything, I think. I did just pop some references in there, just so you know I didn't make it up. But for example, legumes and extra virgin olive oil are associated with less severe total menopause symptoms. Women who adhere to a diet high in unrefined cereals and legumes and low in refined carbs were found to have a low BMI, waist circumference. We've also got, fewer vasomotor menopausal symptoms, which are the hot flushes and the anxiety as well. And then we've got a diet low in fat and high in whole grains, fruit and vegetables, more likely to reduce or eliminate symptoms after 1 year. So just to give you an idea, I think if you're looking for a particular way of eating, it is the Mediterranean diet, which is sort of reflected by this graphic as well. So this is just, again, this is a summary of what I've shown you. Just got a little bit more detail here. And it's just a simple formula for rethinking how you eat in menopause. And there are a few key nutrients I'd just like to mention, but I wouldn't get hung up on anything in particular. Always think about the bigger picture, because if you're eating a varied, nutrient-rich diet, you'll be on the right track. So we've got calcium and vitamin D, magnesium, so that's all good for bone health. Women, as they go through menopause, can lose bone. Foods that are rich in calcium and vitamin D are dairy products, so yogurt, milk, cheese. We've got green leafy veg, tofu, beans, tinned fish, so sardines, tinned salmon, really great sources of calcium. Vitamin D, there is some overlap with vitamin D, but oily fish is particularly good. Eggs. And if you're a veggie and you don't get much sunlight, which we can get vitamin D, you might like to supplement there. Fruit and veggies, I think that's a given, isn't it? I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't tell you all to eat more fruit and veggies. And that mainly comes from the fiber content in particular. Good levels of fiber in the diet are associated with better insulin control, so better blood sugar, and also cortisol regulation. And fruits and vegetables, they're just full of those, I suppose, plant superheroes, aren't they? All the antioxidants and the phytonutrients, it's all those really powerful ingredients that support our health. And the lignans here, so these relate to things like tofu, which can be very useful menopausally as well. But really, the overall message I want to get across this evening is just to choose low glycemic foods and minimize sugary foods and drinks. I think if you don't do anything, or you don't hear anything from what I've said this evening, just keep that in your mind. Now, I wanted to mention supplements because I added this in actually after I put this talk together, because it's a question that always comes up after I talk about nutrition. And one of the reasons is about kitchen sink menopause formulas, and this will make sense just over the next couple of slides. But the global menopause market is valued at $16.9 billion. That's a lot, isn't it? And it's expected to expand at a compound annual growth rate of 5.33% between now and 2030. So why wouldn't companies be investing in menopause and cashing in? Maybe that's a cynic in me. But women have two options when they're trying to support menopause. I think, if you think about supplements, and that's to buy a specific product that's right for them, their symptoms, buy loads of individual products, or buy products that literally have every ingredient with every possible known tenuous link to menopause. It's a bit harsh, but it's true. And these are just some of the supplements that you could buy to support your menopause. So really, you can justify any ingredient in a menopause supplement, and there'll always be a journal or a paper that will try and back it up. But I just think, can you honestly have a menopause supplement that fixes every single symptom for every single menopausal woman? Well, no. And it's a complete minefield as well. So I suppose this is a word of warning, just to really think about, what you need and what your symptoms are. I mean, there was one supplement I came across, and it was over £200 a month for one product. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. And a lot of this is wrapped in marketing, isn't it? Where do women get their information? Where do you get your information from? We've got celebrity doctors, influencers, bloggers, businesswomen, entrepreneurs, and of course, various programs you probably see, online that claim to revolutionize your health. Hopefully, as you're in this group, you're in good hands. But a lot of women aren't in that position. We've got the likes of Davina McCall and Dr. Louise Newson and Liz Earle and Oprah Gwyneth. They're all there, and they're all now flying the menopause flag and selling products. And a lot of this comes from this idea of meno washing, where the prefix meno is slapped onto products for the sole purpose of boosting their appeal. And I suppose their commercial allure, if it's got menopause on, it makes us feel like we need it because we're going through menopause, and menopause is associated with, so many symptoms. There's a lot of advertising, marketing spin, and, it's the menopause version of greenwashing. But I think this can potentially mislead consumers into thinking they need a product specifically for menopause. So shampoos, face creams, clothing, supplements, pillowcases, toothpaste. I mean, there's something for everything, isn't there, when it comes to menopause? I mean, yeah, unbelievable. When I talk to my mum about it, she just sort of shakes her head and goes, "What on earth happened?" But I wanted just to let you know that, and obviously I don't want this to be pushy in any way, but I do have a menopause supplement. I'm not going to talk about it this evening. The information will be in the slides for you. But if you want an all-round support, this is very good. It's geared towards women who are particularly struggling with stress and anxiety and blood sugar problems, hot flush. Not so much. It's very good for women who are on HRT. You can take it off HRT, and it's really for any woman over 40. But like I said, I'm not going to go into that much detail. I just wanted to mention it to you. But I will share these slides so you can have that information. But just to summarize, what next? Well, I think reducing snacking and your sugar intake is the single most important dietary change you can make to help your perimenopause and your menopause. And really, you've got two options. You can either go baby steps, so gradually reduce your intake of sugar, snacks and grazing, or go cold turkey and just ditch everything overnight. Really depends on your personality. I'd probably recommend the first one. Pick your battles and decide where you need to start. But the best thing you can do is make a plan, write it down and stick to it. And just some final thoughts. As I said, I'm talking to quite a big group, and I don't know where you all are. But which stage of menopause are you at? Consider your energy levels. How do you de-stress? What are your personal health goals? And what do you think the 3 dietary changes you will make after this talk? It could be maybe drink less caffeine, or stop drinking caffeine after 2 o'clock. Maybe have more protein at breakfast. Ditch one of your snacks. Think about, where you are and what you could do. And have you got any nutritional gaps in your diet? Are you vegetarian? Are you vegan? Do you think there's anything you need to top up on? So that's me done for this evening. Thank you very much for listening. Hopefully I've just given you an overview of some areas to think about, but particularly in relation to the effects of sugar, snacking and stress on your menopause. Because if you do nothing else, they're the things that can really make a difference quite quickly. Like I said, there are so many other areas of menopause nutrition that I would love to talk to you about, but I just wanted to really start with just some foundations on menopause nutrition and just get you thinking. Because if you go away and change one thing, that's my job done. So I'm happy to stay on and answer any questions that you might have. So I'll just close the slide.
Charlotte, it's very complex, isn't it? There's so many different things, like you said at the very start, to even start looking into things.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of some questions, but it just seems like it all kind of bounces off each other. If you talk about
Yeah.
energy, you can look into sleep, hormones, blood sugars, cortisol. Where do you figure out, how to
Yeah.
improve your energy?
I think the best place to start is probably thinking about your stress levels. Just think about, how, even just put all the nutrition to one side. I know I'm a nutritionist, I'm not really meant to say that, but put all the nutrition to one side for starters, and just think about the stress that you have in your life. Can you change some of it? I know we've all got that like non-negotiable stress. It's like, well, I can't really do much about it because it's beyond my control. But so we can't always control the stress around us, but we can control how we respond and react to it the best that we can. So I think checking in with your stress and thinking about the things that you can do for starters. And I think linked to that is your sleep. Sleep is one of the number one complaints in menopause. We could have just talked about sleep this evening, but maybe start with the stress and the sleep, and then kind of see how you feel.
Have you got any
Where else?
tips? Have you got any tips
So I
on
think
sleep? In terms of
sleep.
like
Yeah,
micronutrients or like eating at a certain time or a certain
yeah.
amount of carbs at night or any tips on that?
So I think the first thing is figure out a routine that works for you. And it's really difficult, isn't it? Because, people say to me, oh, go and meditate in the corner for 10 minutes. I'll be like, what? I'm too busy. I can't do it. Because it's like, but I might have a bath, listen to something, just do something to sort of just relax and make yourself switch off. I try and not look at my phone from at 8 o'clock. It's like lockdown in our house. I know it should be earlier, but with work and things. So I have that cutoff point. And I read before bed because it makes me sleepy. But the other things I do, I take magnesium at bedtime. So magnesium glycinate. That's something you can get in any health food shop. 500 milligrams before bed. Also, another thing that I really like is, I can send you the list of these if that would be helpful. Saffron is really nice. Again, really calming. I find it really good for sleep with a lot of my clients.
What's it called? Saffron.
Saffron, yeah. So like the herb you cook, spice that you cook with.
Okay.
But you can get that in capsule form. Which is, I've had some brilliant results with that especially perimenopause, when things are going a bit crazy. And so taking a break from, I'm just, Anne's put a question here, taking a break from stress, for example, mindfulness, relaxing techniques, does this help cortisol levels? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. But, I think the way that you de-stress would be very different. So, I, for example, I force myself to go to an art class once a week. That's to force myself, I go to a class once, I'm hopeless. I sort of try and sneak out the class with my picture so no one else can see it. But it's just that way of relaxing, getting out of the house, doing something completely different. I've got 3 dogs, but I was going to say they're calming, but they're not. They're 3 chihuahuas and they're an absolute nightmare.
But
But,
wild.
just having them being around, there's just that, they help me chill out. Whereas, clients of mine, will do meditation, they'll do yoga, they'll just do breathing. Breathing is actually a really good one, especially if you're like me and you're too busy to do everything.
Yeah.
I've got an alarm that goes off on my phone 3 times a day, and it just tells me to breathe, and I just breathe. Just some deep breaths. It doesn't matter if I'm pushing a trolley around the supermarket, I'm on the school run, I'm in a meeting, I can still do it,
Yeah.
So it's trying to connect with something that works for you, and it's likely to be different for everyone.
So what about what advice could you give to us guys in particular that, in terms, obviously you're trying to keep the insulin down, so you're keeping the sugars down. So like in terms of diet, and you're talking high fats, high protein diets, but what about for or maybe not?
Not necessarily. I suppose that what I'm talking about is for like most people most of the time. And I think just going, if I haven't got that slide up, the slide I showed you with the plate
Hmm.
with the different elements on there. So it's not about having really high protein diet, because in some cases, you don't want too much protein.
Yeah.
There's that balance, isn't there?
Yeah.
But equally, you need enough protein.
Yeah. Of
So
course.
it's not so much about like specific macros for individuals. That's very much personalized nutrition. But I think overall, just focus on protein as being that main event in your meal. So you might have a whole, like a chicken breast, which is, that's a decent amount, if it's big enough. I'm not talking about the little skinny ones you get in the supermarkets now. You open the packet and there's like 15,
Yeah.
like a decent chunk of chicken. But build up your plate with lots of fiber. Think about the fiber from the vegetables, and even some root vegetables, more so than the grains and the cereals and stuff like that.
And what about round training? Like carbohydrates around training. If you're on kind of, if you're in a calorie deficit, would you increase the carbs on that day to help performance
I
in
think,
the
yeah,
gym?
I think you kind of need to, don't you?
Yeah.
There's got to be an element of common sense there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, definitely. And it's like people who do, whether you're doing marathons or crazy long cycles at the weekend, you've got to have some carbs to keep your body going.
Yeah.
Um, so, it's about tailoring the carbs that you need to the activity that you're doing, which is quite difficult to talk about, in a general sense, unless we start getting our calculators out and trying to figure it all
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
But there's a good question in the chat, actually. What do you think of intermittent fasting? So, I think you can't disagree with the evidence that intermittent fasting, does help people with weight loss or weight maintenance. But is it a good idea in menopause? I don't know. Not always, I don't think. I think if you're going for really long periods of time, not eating much, you're just pushing your cortisol, aren't you? You're pushing your body into that really stressy state, which could be counterintuitive. And there was something in the news, wasn't there, this week about intermittent fasting or fasting increasing your risks of cardiovascular disease or something. The paper was a joke anyway. The guy who wrote it was, he was, I can't remember the company, but it was just shady anyway. So I think it's useful, but I don't think in menopause you need to go to the extreme. Because if you cut out snacking from your diet and you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you're potentially getting 4 to 5 hours in between meals. So you're already intermittently fasting, aren't you?
Yeah.
And remember, when say, going back to the donut example, you eat a donut, you've got that sugar hit, but you've also got the fats, and you get that spike of triglycerides in your blood immediately after eating something really fatty. So your body's trying to get the sugar down, it's trying to get the fats down, and it takes about 5 hours to get both of those back in line before you eat again. So you're looking for those nice curves, in your blood sugar roller coaster, rather than this kind of like where you're grazing and eating the whole time. So you can incorporate fasting into your day without fasting. And then if you're eating 3 meals, you've then got that lovely great fast through the night. You might finish eating at 7 and not have your breakfast till 7. So you're naturally incorporating fasting into your day, and that's my preferred approach to fasting, rather than fast for, I don't know, 2 days, or eat 500 calories for 2 days and do 5-2 diet, or water fasts, or whatever. I mean, there's loads of different versions out there, aren't there? But I just I don't think you need to. And I think in menopause, when your body is undergoing so many changes and you're metabolically, having this great adjustment, it's just, yeah, I don't think it's a good idea. I said that once at a conference, and a thyroid specialist sort of heckled me from the audience, and I was very cross that I'd said that.
Okay.
So it's, I think there's always going to be some debate, but when it comes to nutrition, there is never one answer, is there? There's
Yeah.
always.
So it sounds like a few things to look out for is a moderate carbohydrate diet, cut out the snacking, try to control the stress hormones as much as possible.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, it's a really sort of uncool thing to say, or unpopular thing to say, but there's no such thing as a diet or a supplement, or anything that will fix stress. It's really down to lifestyle. And we've got all these recommendations and ideas, but we've got to find out what works for you. But I think if you can get your body calmer and out of that stress state, then the nutrition is less of a less of an undertaking. You're already working on lowering your cortisol levels, lowering your insulin response, purely by working on your stress.
So stress is a big one because I know a lot of people stress out because they don't diet and they kind of maybe wing their food and eat like big massive gaps and then the binge eat stuff like that. So I suppose a tip for anyone that's trying to lose weight would be keeping your stress levels down by planning your food. So it's one less stress that you're not worrying about, and you
Yeah,
will reach your targets then by obviously planning.
yeah. And I think, if you eat the right meals, then you're less likely to graze in between meals.
Yeah,
So, for example, breakfast could be, an omelette with, 2 or 3 eggs, with peppers, mushrooms, and whatever you've got in your cupboard, in your fridge, or spinach, or whatever. Have that, for breakfast. Drizzle a bit of olive oil on there. Have some fruit on the side. And I mean, that's a really, decent filling breakfast.
yeah,
Um, and then, you shouldn't feel hungry, before lunch. And if you are hungry, it's more likely to be habit, and
yeah,
your system going, hang on, where's the flapjack and the coffee? It's 10:30. Where is it?
yeah,
Um, and then if you can get to lunchtime and have a decent lunch, a piece of salmon, a great big salad. By salad, I don't just mean some iceberg, a tomato, and a few slices of cucumber. Really go to town on your salads. Roast some vegetables, roast some sweet potato, some carrots, variety of leaves, have, a couple of spoons of rice maybe, or some chickpeas or something, but, have a decent portion, and remember, you can eat as many vegetables as you can physically eat,
Yeah,
especially the
yeah.
green ones. And and
Just one last thing from me,
mm,
Charlotte. You talked about, from puberty right through to menopause, the lifestyle.
yeah.
Um, so obviously the side effects will be worse if that middle stage of lifestyle is wrong, like maybe drinking,
Mm,
eating bad food, not exercising, stressed out all the time.
mm.
So if you can maybe keep some of them under control a little bit better, then the menopausal side effects will be less effective. Is that right?
Can be, yeah, it can be. I mean, obviously, it depends on the individual, but I think generally that period of time is, as I said earlier, is a golden opportunity to get your ducks in a row. Start building some better habits into your lifestyle. And
Yeah,
especially, I mean, honestly, if you had to put a gun to my head and say, right, what is the one thing that we shouldn't be doing in menopause? It's drinking.
drinking.
I know people don't want to hear that, and they're just like, la 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 la. I'm just going to keep drinking my prosecco at 7
Yeah,
o'clock every night, and you can't stop me. Um, but honestly, clients of mine who just go for it and go, look, just for a week, just ditch the booze for a week and let me know how you feel. Those symptoms, a lot of them just disappear, because they're sleeping better, um, not as stressed, not as dehydrated. And when you get a better night's sleep, you can just take on the world. Especially if you're busy with, like I said, family, parents, kids, dogs, working from home, working in the office, commuting, whatever it is you're doing.
hmm
But if you don't get a good night's sleep,
yeah,
and you add all those hormone imbalances in as well, it's just recipe for disaster, isn't it? But yeah,
yeah.
ditch the booze. Just do it for 7 days, 7 days, and then see how you feel. And then if it doesn't make any difference, go back to it. But no, I mean, I think things like wine, beers, ciders, they're probably the worst. I mean, I think if you're going to have a drink, this is the question I get asked. It's like, well, if I was going to have a drink, what would be the best drink to have? Um, which I'm not so sure, but generally spirits, clear spirits, so a gin and tonic. I had one client who absolutely, she was doing this diet plan with me. Absolutely wouldn't give up booze. Absolutely wouldn't. She was an absolute nightmare for weeks. And then she suddenly decided she was going to, she said, I've got this great idea, Charlotte. I'm going to stop drinking. And I was like, I've been telling you for weeks. So she started drinking tonic, but she used to dip her finger and just put the gin round the edge of the glass. And she said, it's just like drinking gin and tonic. She said, I can't believe it. So there's a tip for you.
Okay, I think that's all the other questions. Mine would have been just kind of down into different areas. So I suppose if any of the girls want to ask questions, I'm sure.
Please do. I hope that's a reassuring silence. God, this is the quietest group I've ever spoken to ever. Is
Yeah.
it? I think it's because it's 9 o'clock and you all want to go to bed.
Yeah, I thought the girls would have had a couple of questions I'd asked them to kind of think of some questions, unless maybe you've just covered it, all the topics, because you did cover a lot in fairness. But it looks like,
Well,
there is so
Charlotte,
many.
Charlotte,
Sorry.
I have had some success with the Galveston diet, which I
Oh
think
yeah.
is kind of promoted. And again, it's something that if you were in America, you'd be signing up to and paying a monthly fee or whatever. I bought a book, and I also am doing intermittent fasting, which is part of that whole diet.
Mm,
And I am like full menopause, so I'm quite young, so 44. So I kind of hoping that there's longevity in it, but I'm
hmm
kind of worried that it's more of a fad. It's maybe just a more of a water loss. I've been on it now for, I'm gonna say, 2 months, and I've there's been a vast change in my shape, my
mm,
waist and what have you is like a lot smaller. I'm sure Kevin would confirm that would be. There's a few people that have seen been a bit of a change, but
yeah.
that's just the fear that it's going to be like a rebound somewhere down the line, and that could be a problem
I
because it
think, I
would
mean,
deflate your motivation.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're following it, I mean, all these diet plans have sort of phases, don't they, that they kind of carry you through. So, I mean, I'm aware of it. I mean, you know what, if it's working for you and you're enjoying it and you feel well, just keep going.
Yeah. It's just the one thing is the fasting in the mornings is fine, like every day apart from a Saturday, because we would have a high calorie burn exercise on a Saturday, so I have to break the fast on a Saturday or I just cannot keep up because fasted and lower carbohydrate, but I have felt it being good. But I was just wondering if you'd had any bad reviews or any horror stories I should be aware of, like
No,
what's
I mean,
coming down the line.
I don't think so. I mean, I think that there's the rebound with weight loss when people, or generally what I find is that they go, great, I've hit my target weight, amazing. And then they just totally fall off the wagon and it's like back to square one again. Yeah, and there is that rebound where they just pile the weight back on again. And it
Yeah.
seems to, come back on a heck of a lot quicker than it took to get rid of in the first place. But I think it's just about being sensible on these plans. I mean, it's not, I never sit here and say, you shouldn't be doing that, you shouldn't be doing that, apart from snacking, and alcohol, and smoking. No, I'm joking. But I think, find the approach that works for you, and if you have to tweak it to make it work better for you, like when you're doing your exercise, just breaking the fast, having some extra carbs in there. I think that's more beneficial than slavishly following the diet and then killing yourself when you get down the gym.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's all those, I suppose, questions about um, your mental health as well.
Mhm.
And I think the exercise is important for that. Yeah.
What about the other thing was histamine? Is there benefits to having a lower histamine diet as well for menopause, or have you heard? No,
Not
because
unless.
yeah, I've just heard so many different things. We're bombarded, as you say, with people
Oh,
giving us advice from like famous people and whatever. And now I'm just like, I get so many things on Facebook or whatever every night telling me how I should live my
yeah. I
life.
mean, my advice to people is always, look, choose a handful of people that you like on social media and follow them, and then kind of like block out the rest of the noise. Otherwise, you just hear too many mixed messages, and everyone contradicts each other. I mean, I think when it comes to histamine, you know if you've got a histamine issue. Often when you go through menopause, and especially those on HRT, sometimes that higher estrogen can drive histamine problems. But you'll know if you've got a histamine problem. Reactions to food, alcohol, headaches, all the histamine type symptoms like allergies. So yeah, I mean, I think histamine, it's a problem it's a problem for people with the problem. But I think if you're asking if it's a problem, I don't think it's a problem for you.
Yeah.
If that makes any
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, yeah, no problem. Thank you.
You're welcome. Um, any other questions? So it's my dog snoring in the background. Sorry if you can hear her. I was just trying to think, Kevin, some of the questions that I often get asked. I'm just thinking, well, we haven't covered them.
There's a question come in there, I think, is it?
Here we go. Oh, the mental health aspect is difficult because everything seems so gloomy with regards to menopause. You are so right. Yeah, I think, I think the education aspect is important. But I think the scaremongering isn't helpful, and whinging celebrities isn't helpful. There was a paper in the Lancet quite recently, I don't know if anyone saw, but it was all over the news saying that celebrities are causing I think, more harm than good. Which, yeah, I mean, you know, some of it you know, you sort of agree with. I mean, I'm all for raising awareness, but I think sometimes it just goes a bit too far, perhaps. Joyce just said, I feel like I'm doomed to a life of painful joints and growing a beard. Joyce, don't worry, I haven't got a beard yet. Yes. But you know,
Charlotte, just in
yeah,
relation to joints and stuff,
yeah.
can you give me any tips on like supplements for joints or like food to be using to improve your joints or?
So I would say, you know, I'm a bit like a broken record.
Mhm.
Managing your insulin, because insulin is one of the most inflammatory substances in our bodies. So if you manage your blood sugar response, you manage your insulin, your glucose levels, and then, you know, in a roundabout sort of way, you're helping to support the inflammatory response of the body.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. So in terms of bones and joints, well, weight bearing exercise, which I'm sure you do plenty of,
Yep.
is great for your bones, your joint health. In terms of supplements,
Sorry, just a question on that. So I'm on like 4,000 calories a day, and the reason is I'm trying to maintain my muscle mass throughout becoming really fit and having good performance to do high rocks.
mhm,
I'm probably on about 500 grams of carbs a day.
mhm.
Would you say that would be too high? I'm like about 80 kilos in weight, carry quite a bit of muscle. Would you reckon I'm in the right place, or would that be too much carbohydrates to release too much insulin that could be possibly causing inflammation in the joints?
I think probably not. I think if you're grazing throughout the day, maybe. If you're eating proper meals, no, I don't think it is a problem.
Yeah, so I don't snack at all. It's pretty much 5 good solid meals a day,
Yeah,
and they're all pretty decent. Apart from, like, I would have a bagel. I would have sometimes I'd have a couple of Rice Krispie bars. Apart from that, all the carbs are from rices and
yeah,
potatoes and stuff like that, and veg stuff.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing, isn't it? You know, it's where those carbohydrates are coming from. You know, if you're, you know, stuffing your face with, you know, crisps and sweets all day, you know,
Yeah.
that's like a different proposition, isn't it? In terms of joint supplements, I mean, again, I can send you some information. I've put a link on one of those slides. It's got a link where you can actually get the supplements that I suggest.
Okay.
And they ship, you know, globally. So, you know, it doesn't matter where they're going. But you know, I mean, with the joint supplements, I'd be more likely to go for a complex. So, you know, with a few different things in, rather than, you know, a tub of calcium or a tub of glucosamine or chondroitin or something like that. You know, it's better looking for a complex.
Hmm.
I can't think of one at the top of my head, but I'll look one up for you, and I can send it over. I mean, the other thing as well in terms of inflammation, is, you know, anti-inflammatory supplements. So things like turmeric is
Turmeric.
great. There's a lovely company called the Naked Pharmacy, and again, I'll put this on my list for you. They've got a brilliant turmeric product. You know, it's 800 milligrams per serving, which is a really good hit.
Okay.
Turmeric, because there's a lot of, I mean, if you go to, you know, some of the supermarkets, you can get some of these, but they're just not very good quality.
Okay.
And you know, and whilst I don't always recommend the most expensive, you know,
Yep.
there's usually a, you know, halfway house, I think. One of the questions it sort of relates to this, actually, about collagen. So
Hmm.
whenever I do these talks, someone always says, usually closely after, what do I think of intermittent fasting? What do I think of collagen?
Okay.
And I don't know, does anyone here use collagen supplements or drinks or
There
anything
was
like
actually someone talking about this in the gym
that?
yesterday about using
Right.
collagen.
I mean,
Sorry.
I'm sort of, I don't know, I sort of buy it and don't buy it. Because really we're going to eat that collagen powder. and it's still going to be broken down into its component parts. So, you know, we're sort of led in via the media and you know, influencers that, you know, you eat the collagen, it's like zap, it goes straight to your skin and makes you look 10 years younger. I wish it did, but it doesn't. And then you have people going, oh, I know you have to have fish collagen for skin, and you need to have bovine collagen for your joints, and you need to have, you know, and it's just constant mixed messages the whole time. And there are so many celebrities vlogging collagen as well. So I'm not convinced. But saying that, there is one product that I'm aware of, called it's called Totally Derma, and they've done some small scale studies with some doctors on Harley Street in London, and they found the product to be really helpful for genitourinary conditions, which I've found really, really interesting. So, you know, it's got a place, but is it because of the component parts of the collagen, or is it what they've mixed the collagen with, as opposed to, you know, just being like collagen being this magical ingredient? There's a collagen that, again, I'll send you a list of all like the ones that I would use or recommend. But there's, I forgot what I was going to say now. Collagen. There's Totally Derma, which is a really expensive one. There's also there's one called, I think it's just collagen, by Great Lakes, which is dead cheap. It's just a big box of collagen. And I think years ago the Kardashians were flogging it somewhere. I don't know how I found that out, but someone said, "Oh, you got that one?" I said, "No, I got this one because it's dead cheap." But it's quite a good one. So I don't think you have to be swayed by expensive labels or celebrities with collagen. It's still just collagen.
And
Okay,
if you're looking at
that's
bone broth,
right.
because
Yeah.
I bought some bone broth. Again, it's like organic bone broth made actually here in Northern Ireland. So it's from
Nice.
Larne, and the woman used it through cancer treatment and stuff. So obviously, I'm trying anything because of menopause. Like I would spend any amount of money to try and keep myself on the right side. So it's bovine collagen. So have you any thoughts on bone
Great.
broth and that kind
Just
of
no,
stuff?
I mean
It's
it's
organic.
really great because it's really supportive for your gut health and your gut lining. So as we transition through menopause, the integrity of our gut lining changes, so it can become more permeable, and our microbiome changes through menopause as well. So there hasn't been any human studies on this because it's quite difficult to, you know, slice someone's gut and have a look at it under a microscope. But a lot of the studies are on hysterectomized rats, and they've looked at the changes in their microbiome, you know, throughout their life stages, and there seems to be that change in during menopause. So I know it's not in humans, but I think it's quite interesting. And you know, there are more tests becoming available that can actually measure your gut barrier function. And what I've noticed is a lot of the clients that I work with, you know, they're all obviously menopausal, and you know, we're seeing the same patterns in their test results, which is, I mean, it's fascinating. I don't think I've seen quite enough to warrant a study, but you know, I'll have to make do with rats for now in the research. But it's really interesting.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that link.
Yeah, Charlotte, just one last question before we wrap things
Yeah.
up. If you were to tell, everyone that's watching tonight, and in general, just for general health, not around menopause, to take 3 vitamins, what 3 vitamins would you advise that 99% of people should be taking?
We can cheat and take menopause support that I mentioned earlier, which has got everything you could want. But apart from that, if we're looking at 3 individual, I would check your vitamin D, check your vitamin D levels, and if they're not good enough, take vitamin D. Magnesium, because that can just help with really good night's sleep. And probably saffron.
Saffron.
Yeah, it's like I just think it's a really, really magic ingredient.
Okay.
So when I used to, I'm not with this, I don't work with this company anymore, so I have no like financial connections with them at all. But when I formulated their product, I said to them, we have to have saffron in, and they're like, no, we can't, it's too expensive, it's far too expensive. I'm like, well, you either put saffron in or you have to find someone else to work on your product for you. I just think it's such a magic ingredient. It's calming. It's, I've seen ladies who it supported sleep, it supported hot flushes, anxiety. It seems to be energizing at the same time. I just think it's amazing.
Is there a
Hands
certain time
down.
of day to take it?
So I mean, you can take it any time. It's got that nice calming effect. So how it works is it's a bit like nature's serotonin.
Mm,
So that's where it's got that sort of anti-anxiety effect.
okay.
You want to be taking about 30 milligrams a day. The company, there's probably 3 products I could suggest. So like I said, it's in the menopause support that I mentioned, but it's also in the naked pharmacy. They have it, and they've got a calm version and an energy version. So it's been mixed with some other things. I'll send you this list, by the way. And also there's a product called Zen, which I've been taking this at bedtime actually, and it's got saffron, theanine, and something else I can't remember the top of my head, but it's got quite a sedative effect.
Right.
Which is
Okay.
very good. But I can send you like a list of the things I've mentioned, just
That'd be great, Charlotte. Thank
and
you.
then you can, if anyone wants to try them, you know what to look for.
Okay.
But I mean, supplements is a difficult one. I also say I'm not going to talk about supplements, but tonight I thought I'm just going to put a section in, and then we've got it in there because it's the stuff that everyone wants to hear. Because again, just bombarded with so much stuff.
Yeah, I think everyone's looking at quick fix. People are just kind of
Yeah,
drifting off the fact that they have to put a bit of planning into their nutrition,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
they're kind of looking for the miracle pill, really, aren't they?
I mean, I think there's a good rationale for taking a multi in menopause. Just because your body is going through significant changes and undergoing a lot of stress. So, it makes sense to try and to fill in those gaps. And I think, that one of my goals when I was working on the menopause product was to have that calming aspect, the stress and the anxiety side, but also work on the sugar balance. So it has ingredients in there like chromium, alpha lipoic acid, really great for blood sugar balance. And honestly, in terms of diet, that's really, alongside this, like the lifestyle stress stuff, it's the sugar balance.
Okay.
And it's not, it's not no carb. It's
Yeah.
just be mindful of your carbs and where they're coming from.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that, Charlotte.
You're very
I picked
welcome.
up a lot from that. I've got a wee bit of a deeper understanding now of menopause, which is good.
You're very welcome. Like I said, it's always very, very difficult to know exactly what to cover,
Yeah.
but I thought, look, I'm just going to cover some stuff that you can actually put into place like now,
Yeah, I picked that up when you started talking about it because I was taking little notes of, and I was going, holy moly, there's quite a lot here that, like, in particular subjects that you could spend probably ages focusing
Yeah.
on, and then there's such a big circle of them. So, menopausal is so complex and realistically, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think, as I said right at the beginning, you've got to understand how your menstrual cycle works. you know, on a good day, you know, to be able to understand what's happening in menopause. You know, there's this idea that we go through menopause, we fall off the cliff, dust ourselves down, and it's like business as usual. It's like, well, it doesn't really work like that. You know, this is like a whole, you know, journey from, you know, puberty all the way, you know, till way past menopause and postmenopausally. Well, look,
Okay.
I'll make sure that I share the slides with you. I'll share my list of supplements as well. And if anyone has any other questions, please get in touch with me. I will, there's something else I was going to do. I have a menopause ebook. So it's not, you know, it's not long and complicated, or just got some myths about menopause in there. So what I'll do is I'll share that with you as well, and you can circulate that if that would be helpful.
Also, if you want to tell the girls where to find you on Instagram, they can give you a little following.
Oh, okay. So it's at Menopause Nutritionist.
Okay.
So nice and easy.
Brilliant.
All
Thank you very
right.
much for that, Charlotte, and I'll be in touch with you, okay?
You're welcome. Thanks ever so much, everyone. It's lovely to meet you, and thanks for the brilliant questions as well.
See you later,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.